Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer. Today we're here for yet another episode of Civilization 6 Tips, where today we're going to be talking about a topic that I've noticed on the Civ subreddit that a lot of people are having frustrations with, and that a lot of people just don't quite understand. So I'm going to do my best to explain this topic and kind of mend some of those issues. And by the way, the topic is coastal flooding, which is a new mechanic that has been introduced in Gathering Storm, and it's it can play a decently large role in the late game. It's not as influential as some of the other mechanics in the game, but it is definitely important and something that you have to work with. Before we start the video, I am just going to apologize because I have been sick lately, so I know my voice probably is not quite the same as what it normally is. I am feeling better, and I'm getting there. My voice is getting back to what it normally is, but it's still not quite there, so sorry if it sounds a little bit funny. The other thing I just want to mention is that I am going to be doing an entire in-depth video. I'm sure some of you have seen my in-depth videos before, but I'm going to do one on the climate system in Gathering Storm. I'm starting some work on that right now, and I might need some data from you guys, but I will talk about that at the very end of the video. So if you're interested in helping me out with that, stay tuned to the end to learn more. Let's go ahead and get into things with coastal flooding, though, and one thing I just want to mention is that since I am doing that entire in-depth video later, which that'll be a very long video, in this video all I'm going to focus on is coastal flooding itself. So, to start off, the first thing that you can do with coastal flooding, and it's something that you can do from the very start of the game, is check out the settler lens. So all of your lenses, for those of you that don't know, are down here in the bottom left. Right down here, there's the lens menu, and if you select the settler lens, for one, this will give you information on where you can settle. If I'm sure you see it every time you select a settler, but it will also tell you what land is going to flood. So you can see on these three tiles right here that each of these three tiles have little wave icons on them, and the wave icons just mean that this is land that is eventually going to flood if climate change reaches a certain point. So this one means that it is a 1 meter coastal lowland tile, and it will be the first one to flood whenever the sea levels rise. This one is a 2 meter lowland tile, and it's the second one that will flood, and this one is a 3 meter lowland tile, and it is the third one that will flood. Now, I'm sure all of you are probably asking, well, like, Saxy, when are these going to actually flood? Like, what dictates when they're going to flood? And to find that information out, we can go over here to the world climate screen. So this bar up here at the top of the world climate screen indicates the change of sea levels increasing that is going on in the current game. And I'll talk more about how this works whenever I do the in-depth video. But pretty much all you have to know is that this bar will increase as you gain climate change points, and these are gained by increasing the global temperature, which pretty much just comes from CO2. So more CO2 just means, more points, which means higher sea levels, which is going to flood your tiles. It should be noted that sea levels rise by 0.5 meters every single level. So you start at 0.5, and then you get to +1, plus 1.5, and so on. The big things to take note of here is that on level 2 is when the first coastal lowland tiles will flood. So that's when your 1 meter lowland tiles will flood. Phase 3 will flood your 2 meter lowland tiles. Phase 4 will submerge your 1 meter tiles. Phase 5 will flood your 3 meter tiles, Phase 6 will submerge your 2 meter tiles, and Phase 7 will submerge your 3 meter tiles. And this is just something that, if you're worried about flooding, you should just occasionally check this screen, maybe every 4 or 5 turns or so, just to make sure that you're not getting too close to losing some of your tiles, because you do have to be very proactive with dealing with flooding. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a bit of a sticky situation. So let's go ahead and talk about what does flooding mean and what does submerged mean. So you can see here, as I had brought up the settler lens earlier, that these two tiles are levels 1 and 2, and this one is level 3. So by this point in the game, since we're on phase 6 of the climate change, the level 1 and 2 tiles are submerged, and the level 3 tile is only flooded, and it will submerge at the next level. So if we take a look, let's talk about flooding first. So if we take a look at this tile, you can see that really it's pretty much just a normal tile. It just has a little bit of water on it. It's pretty much a normal forest. It has normal forest yields. I mean, I am coupe, so I do get extra yields from my forests. But aside from that, is a fairly normal forest tile. And that's really kind of the story of flooding, is that for most tiles, it doesn't really do anything. I have another one up here that I can show. This is just a plains tile that is unimproved, and you can see it has the usual plains yields, and it functions totally as a land tile. One of the things to note is that if you do have a district or an improvement on these tiles, such as the Port Khmer do over here, so right here you can see that this is a level 3 tile, which means it's only flooded right now, and they still have their theater square here. The only issue is that it is flooded, and thus it is pillaged. And since it's pillaged and flooded, that means that they are not able to repair it unless they are able to get rid of the flooding. And the way that you can get rid of flooding is by producing I can show you down here, is by producing a flood barrier around the tile. So when tiles are flooded, they are still recoverable as long as you're able to get up a flood barrier in time before they submerge. So if you happen to see that, your tiles are starting to flood and they're tiles that you really don't want to lose to flooding, then you need to produce the flood barrier as soon as you can for reasons we'll talk about in just a little bit here. If your tiles do reach submerge, though, they effectively do just become sea tiles. So you can see that this one right here was one of the ones that was originally a land tile. Both of these were actually. And now they pretty much just function as sea tiles. So this originally was a plains tile, but now it's simply a coast tile. It has the expected coast tile yields from, I do have a lighthouse in this city, so that's why it has a little bit of gold on it. But it pretty much just has everything that you would expect from a coast tile. It functions as a sea tile, so you can sail ships through it. I could put a harbor on this tile if I was able to, and that's pretty much it. One of the other things to note about submerged tiles is that districts on submerged tiles will be destroyed, like totally destroyed. They're not like whenever you are flooded and they're just pillaged. It actually removes the district from the game. You are able to place it down again, though, in a different location, so it's not that big of a deal. The only thing that you might lose is you might lose like a really good adjacency spot if you lose a district, but not always lost because you can just rebuild it in a different location, assuming that you have space, of course. I believe that the same goes for wonders. I'm not actually 100% sure on wonders as to whether or not they are destroyed. I'm inclined to say that they are not, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So if one of you could, fact check me on that from your own experience in the comment section below, please do so, and I'll be sure to pin your comment to let people know exactly what happens. One of the things to note is that cities are totally immune to the effects of both flooding and being submerged. So even if, like I settled on a level 1 tile and it was submerged, the city would stay there. It doesn't get rid of the city. It doesn't really do anything to the city. I think that's actually a little bit of a bummer. I think that would have been like a really cool thing to do if they actually made it so that, you would lose cities should you choose to settle on tiles that are going to flood. So really what this means is that whenever you're settling cities, don't be afraid to settle on these tiles that will flood, because honestly, it's better for you to have the city there than to have a district there, because you're not going to lose the city. The city's not really going to lose any yields, but if you put a district there, you can lose the district, you can lose the yields, and you have a much worse time because then you're going to lose the tile eventually. So really, as you're looking around, just plan whenever. I know that a lot of people get very scared of these things and they say, oh my god, the land's going to flood, I don't want to settle there. But really, you kind of do, because if you don't settle on the tiles that are going to flood, you're going to lose them eventually anyways. And now let's talk about how we can prevent these tiles from flooding, and that is with the flood barriers. And the flood barriers are unlocked with the computer's technology, which is quite late in the tree, but once again, I'll talk about that in a little bit when I talk about things I hope to see changed. But they are unlocked with the computer's technology, and you can build them in any city that has submergible tiles that are in its borders. So if your city doesn't have any tiles that are going to be submerged, then it really doesn't matter. You can't build a flood barrier, and nor would you ever need to. So as I had mentioned, you can use flood barriers to save tiles that are already flooded, but that isn't a very good idea, and we'll talk about why right now. So you can see that the flood barrier will protect coastal lowland tiles in the city from flooding. The initial build cost and per turn maintenance are variable based on the number of coastal lowland tiles in the city. So if you have a lot of coastal lowland tiles, then these are actually going to be quite expensive, but if not, they're actually not that bad on production cost, and you can build them pretty fast. The other thing that the production cost is dependent on, though, is the current sea level. So since the sea level is so high right now, it will take a lot of turns in some of my cities to produce flood barriers. Like you can see this one down here, it's protecting one tile. It's protecting, the tile that my city's on, and it's going to take 131 turns to produce. And I think that this is one of the areas where a lot of people are having frustrations with the flood barriers. And I think that this is somewhere that Firaxis can honestly improve the game and not make the not make the production cost increase as dramatically with flooding, because it is a cool mechanic to be able to save your tiles that are flooding, like over here, but it is it's kind of a bummer that they get to this ridiculous amount of production cost to save a single tile. So I think that that could be improved, and that's a reason why you have to be really proactive with your flood barriers, because if you wait too long and you start to flood your tiles, then the production cost is going to go up so high, and the maintenance cost for them is as well. So if you are concerned about losing tiles, maybe you have some really good districts that are on floodable coastal tiles, what you have to do is you honestly have to beeline for computers. If you're not really up there in the tech tree, like poor Tomyers down here, who's only in the industrial era, then you honestly are just kind of out of luck. There's not really much that you can do. And one of the things that I think Firaxis should do to kind of improve this system is move computers back at least one tech. So I think that they should be in this line of techs right here. So right at the end of the modern era, I think would be a very good spot for them. And I mean, logically, it kind of makes sense because, in the modern era, you can probably have technology to build, things that stop the sea from coming into your cities and on your tiles. So I think that they could put it maybe on chemistry or on combustion or something. I mean, honestly, electricity would be a good spot for it, but there's already a lot of things on electricity, so I doubt that they would want to put it there. So I would say either on chemistry or on combustion would be a good spot for them to move this. But I'm not sure if they're going to, and honestly, I doubt that they are. So really, you're kind of just stuck with rushing computers, and it's not something that's particularly fun to do, Nobody ever likes to have to do something in Civ. But if you really want to ensure that you're not going to be losing important tiles to coastal flooding, you have to rush computers and you have to start building the flood barriers immediately, because if you don't, you're going to encounter like ridiculously high production costs like this, and you're going to be in for a bad time. One of the other things that I want to mention is that you can see how many expected turns it is until the phase of climate change increases. So you can see right here that the next melt of polar ice is expected in 1 turn. So that means we're going to hit phase 7 in 1 turn. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to save this tile because it's going to take me 3 more turns to produce this flood barrier. But it's going to flood or submerge in the next turn. So if I advance the turn here, we'll see it's going to flood. Oh, and Canada wants to be friends. Yeah, sure, Canada. Why not, right? And now you can see that as I've advanced the turn, the forest is now gone, the flood barrier around the tile is now gone as well, and the yields have changed. Interestingly, I don't know if this is a bug or not, but this 2 culture and 2 faith should not be there, nor should that 2 production. So that's probably just a bug with the Maori right now. I'll advance the turn once more just to see if it goes away. Maybe it just needs to update, but if not, that's an interesting bug for the Maori. You can also see down here that the production cost of our flood barrier has once again gone up. So previously it was 3 turns to complete, and now it is 11. So to just kind of summarize things up on a nice TLDR, in order to check the levels of flooding that will occur on tiles, you can go ahead and look at the settler lens, and you'll see either a wave with either a 1, 2, or 3 on it, or I guess just nothing, 2 or 3 on it, and that signifies the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd levels that will flood and then submerge as well. Flooding on tiles will pillage any districts that are on them and make them unrepairable unless you are able to remove the flooding on the tile. And once a tile becomes submerged, it will totally transform into a sea tile, and it is workable like a sea tile. You can put a harbor on it, you can sail ships through it, but any districts that are on it will be totally removed from the game, and you are able to place them out. You are able to replace them anywhere else on land in the city. In order to prevent flooding, you can place down your flood barriers, which are very helpful because they will totally prevent the land from flooding. Even if the sea levels rise to the maximum level, as long as there's a flood barrier around the tile, it will be totally protected. You have to be careful though, because if you let the tiles start to flood, then the production cost of your flood barriers goes up quite highly, honestly at an insane rate, and then it's very difficult to be able to prevent the flooding. Flood barriers also can remove flooding from a tile, but if the tile is submerged, it is totally unrecoverable. So my best advice, as I've said, in order to prevent your tiles from flooding is to just rush straight for computers. As I mentioned before, I really wish that they would move this back into this line of text right here, but I don't know, maybe they will. Maybe if we all collectively tweet at the Civ team right now, maybe they'll change it, but we'll see. If you're interested in helping me gather data for the climate in-depth video, the things that you can give me to help me, so you can just comment these in the comment section below if you want. But the things that I need is I need what the total CO2 level is. I need the global temperature increase. I need the percent increase from climate change for all 4 of the forecast things over here. So for storms, river flooding, droughts, and volcanic activity, if it shows a increase from climate change there, you can feel free to include that as well. And I believe, and the other thing is I need you to hover over the climate change phases and just tell me how many points you have from what. So you can see right here it says 1 from disaster intensity and 8 from global temperature, and give me both of those values. And then the other really important thing for you to give me is what world size you're playing on. So like small, standard, large, huge, any of that. So if you could provide that information in the comment section below, that would be immensely helpful, and it will make my life a lot easier for figuring out exactly how all of this stuff works. So thank you everyone for watching. I've been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.